It's Saturday morning cartoons, and I've got something very, very special to share and plug and shamelessly self promote this Saturday morning. Yesterday, this appeared at my doorstep directly from the publisher, Llewellyn, my good friends at Llewellyn. And But actually, this book is well over 20 years in the making. Now, as most of you know, I don't write novels, okay, or I usually don't write novels. Usually, my material is would be officially nonfiction. Uh, if you can call writing about magic, mysticism, tarot, and Kabbalah nonfiction. But that's what I do. But over 20 years ago, Constance and I would often take walks together in Costa Mesa, and I had this. I have to call it a revelation, okay, while taking a shower. Very often, the shower is sort of a telephone booth to God. But anyway, for some reason, I don't know what got me started on this. During that shower, I, I figured out how Jesus, in the story anyway, because believe me, the historicity of Jesus is, well, anyway, in the shower, I figured out I know how he turned the water into wine at the wedding feast at Cana. And because it was according to the four gospels anyway, it was or a couple of the gospels anyway. It was at that event that was his first miracle. Until that miracle, he was a nobody. He wasn't well known at all. He had no street cred. Okay. After he turned the water into wine at the wedding feast, everybody all of a sudden had super faith in him. And almost anything he did, just like in the life of Brian, okay, anything he did was seized on as miraculous, and it started his whole career. Okay, well, when I told Constance the circumstances of how I thought that could have easily happened, uh, she said, "Oh my gosh, yes, of course." And so I thought I'd write a little short story uh, to, to to get everybody else to go, "Oh shoot, yes, that's how we did that." Uh, but in order to do that short story, I had to kind of set up the backstory to it. How did he get himself into that position, and what was the circumstances uh, uh, actually surrounding his family life, his position in that sort of local geopolitical environment of the day, okay, in Roman Palestine. And so the more I had to set up that backstory to make that miracle story make sense, it kept getting longer and longer and more, to me anyway, more interesting, and put it in historical perspective so that by the time you hear the story, you go, yes, of course, that's how we do. Well, it kept getting longer and longer. And so it was too long for a short story and too short for even a novelette. So I started to think, how did he do those other miracles? What was the circle? And it kept getting longer and longer, and I kept looking at the four Gospels, and said, well, how could this story get turned into this miraculous wonder fairy tale? What kind of really happened to give rise to the bizarre story as presented in the New Testament? And so I kept tackling one more little vignette at a time until by around 2000, I had pretty much a novelette going for me, and I polished it up, but still it was very short, and a good friend of mine said, well, let's kind of self-publish this, and around 2006 we did publish it in a very limited edition. It was beautiful, and you can still find them rare for hundreds and hundreds of dollars if you're a collector. But then I didn't feel good about it. It's almost immediately went out of print, and then I thought, no, I got to expand on this. I've got to actually turn it into a novel. And of course, my good friends at Llewellyn, Alicia Galla at Llewellyn said, sure, yeah, let's do that. And we did. And finally, the expanded, full-blown, if you happen to have that first kind of self-published edition, that's fine. You've got quite a bit of this, but there's stuff in the beginning, the middle, and most importantly, the end in this new edition here, and it's a normal price. You're not going to pay $300-400 for that. It's just a normal book called An Accidental Christ, the story of Jesus as told by his uncle. And even though you don't feel right about reading a novel by me, if you're happy reading stories about Aleister Crowley and the magic of Thelema and things like that, that's fine. Thank you for. But if you would like to crawl into my head enough to humor me and try to see my thoughts on a fantasy about a fantasy, I think you'll love An Accidental Christ. And I'm going to share just a couple little snippets for you. First of all, I'm going to read the, oh look, it's got maps of the Holy Land and stuff. So this is the preface to the 2007, the introductory edition. Today, a growing number of people are examining what is known and what is not known about the man who is called the Christ. For a better part of 2,000 years, the only historic documents recognized by the great institutions of Christendom were the Gospels themselves. These texts offer to the intelligent mind more questions than answers. They abound with contradictions, inconsistencies, omissions, and errors in geography. So many and so serious are the irregularities in the Gospels that only those individuals who are prepared to sacrifice their better judgment on the altar of blind faith can still in good conscience embrace them as viable history. What might have happened, really, to give rise to the myth of Jesus Christ? Modern scholarship, aided by the discoveries of the so-called Gnostic Gospels and the Dead Sea Scrolls, has provided with us a much clearer picture of the historic milieu of the first century Palestine, the politics, the cults, the temple establishment, the movements, and most importantly, the activities of a sect or sects of high-born Jews who for generations awaited a hybrid child, a child whose unique pedigree would make him the unquestioned heir to the mythological throne of David, the King of the Jews. I think it's safe to predict that fundamentalist Christians will find accidental Christ offensive and blasphemous. I did not, however, write it to offend anyone. I assure you that had it been my goal merely to be offensive, I could have done a much better job of it than accidental Christ, and probably would have had a lot more fun doing it. Simply put, An Accidental Christ is a novel. It was written to entertain, amuse, and possibly stimulate open-minded individuals of all walks of life. Moreover, it was written to broaden the reader's spiritual worldview by introducing into the story many provocative bits of information that have come into light in the last 50 years. Tiny bits like the names of Jesus' relatives, and huge bits like the nature of baptism or the fallacy of the story of the Egyptian captivity. Bits that bring into serious question the historical veracity of many parts of both the Old and the New Testaments. After reading this little book, I encourage the reader to reread Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and consider the possibility that many of the incidents described in those texts could have unfolded in a similar, if not identical way to that which I have outlined in An Accidental Christ. Some of my interpretations are necessarily speculative, and if I've taken the liberty of having some fun with them, as the example of Jesus turning water into wine, it is partly to remind the reader that my text is no more absolute truth to be accepted at face value than are the more famous tales upon which it is based. I want the reader to remember that any great story is an admixture of fact and fiction, and this is certainly just as true of the greatest story ever told. Wherever possible, I've drawn my dialogue directly from biblical texts. Please pay special attention to Book 4, Chapter 2, where Jesus has an encounter with the woman at the well. The dialogue between Jesus and the woman was taken directly from John chapter 2. It's chapter 4. And then I tell where the Bible, what Bible translation I use. And then, well, I'll always have a special fondness for the language and cadence of the King James Version that I grew up with. My determination to be as faithful as possible to the original text has made the George Lambsa translation of the Bible of my choice for for the quotes. Okay, the Lamsa Bible was translated directly from Aramaic, which arguably was even before the text before Greek, directly from Aramaic to English. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to give you just a little taste. Introduction to the 2023 updated and revised edition. Regarding the Clopasarian manuscripts, background history and provenance of source materials. The Mount Carmel Scrolls. In 1949, two Bedouin shepherd boys seeking shelter at the foot of Mount Carmel, in what is today northern Israel, discovered a common clay amphora partially buried under a rough outcropping. The mouth of the vessel was sealed with beeswax and wrapped tightly with goatskin straps. After breaking the seal, they found within 3 parchment scrolls of obvious antiquity. They attempted to unravel the largest of the 3, only to discover the fragility of the document prevented further inspection. Hoping their discovery might be of some value, they carried the amphora and its contents to Joppa and showed them to Abub Ibrahim, a local dealer of antiquities. Ibrahim examined the broken fragment from the largest of the scrolls and recognized the writing to be a form of archaic Greco-Aramaic. It was penned in a style commonly used in formal documents of the 1st century Judea. Paying the boys the equivalent of $16, he took possession of the amphora and scrolls and brought them to Dr. Constantine Zuriak of Damascus University, who immediately recognized the potential importance of the material. Zuriak arranged for the scrolls to be safely unrolled, deciphered, and transcribed by a visiting team of archaeologists from the University of Copenhagen, who examined and tested them. It was soon determined that all 3 scrolls were indeed genuine 1st century documents. More importantly, it was clear to Dr. Zuriak and his team that the material was of significant historic importance, as portions of it appeared to have been personally authored, dictated, or commissioned by an influential and well-known 1st century Jewish nobleman, Clopas ben Heli. Clopas was the half-brother of Joseph ben Heli, father of the martyred 1st century teacher and holy man Jesus ben Joseph of Nazareth. While it's immediately obvious the bulk of the scroll's narrative is not written in the 1st person of Jesus' uncle Clopas, researchers are in agreement that sections bearing the titles Prologue and Epilogue were indeed personally dictated, etc., etc., etc. Now, it goes on. They found others. Clopasarian codexes. The Vatican Codex, Confessio Clopas. Then a set of Egyptian ones that were found in Egypt. Then in Toulouse, France, all within a 2-year period. Okay, but anyway. I'll close with the prologue of Clopas. Remember, I'm reading from Accidental Christ. An Accidental Christ. The story of Jesus is told by his uncle, Llewellyn. It's officially out June 8th, but I got mine right now. Of course, it's ready for pre-order everywhere. The Prologue of Clopas. And there's epigrams that I've inserted. There's also a great many other things which Jesus did, which, if they were written one by one, not even this world, I believe, could contain the books that would be written. John, chapter 21, verse 25. Let it first be said that I am not the author of this story. The burdens of composition have been mercifully borne by a younger hand that never touched the flesh of the man whom they now call the Christ. Indeed, the scribe was a young boy when the events he so imaginatively describes occurred. He never trod the sacred soil of Palestine, nor can he in his youth possibly understand the full gravity of the theme. However, to his credit, he has been a good student and a loyal friend throughout my years of exile. Realizing that my life now draws near its end, and soon I shall be gathered to my fathers, he has prevailed upon me to read his version of the story, a tale which I have recounted to him 1,000 times. I wish I could say his narrative is flawless in every respect, but alas, I cannot. Please do not misunderstand me. His overall understanding of the essential facts is profoundly accurate. The details, however, abound with petty inaccuracies. So many, in fact, that I abandoned my intention to itemize them for correction. For the most part, they do but innocent injustice to a few dates and features of geography which are completely irrelevant to the story as a whole. Such trivial matters serve only to irritate the sensibilities of a dying old man who, because he can see no future, feels he must jealously preserve the past. I hope the reader will forgive the author, as I have done, for his litany of minor errors, realizing that ultimately the underlying truth is not revealed in the details. As progenitor of the tale, I unreservedly affirm that he has remained throughout an unyielding servant of the truth. I believe, however, that future generations of readers might appreciate, by way of introduction, a glimpse into the historic milieu of the story. I am an adept student of the past, and I know very well that those who conquer create history to conceal their crimes and justify their infamies. It is inevitable. Information that is today common knowledge will one day be torn from cultural memory so that history can be remolded to serve the expedients of entrenched power. It is for those future generations whose vision of my world may become obscured by time or villainy that I offer the following brief comments. I am Clopas. I am a Jew of the tribe of Judah and a member of a royal family whose bloodline is said to spring from the loins of Israel's legendary warrior king David. Whether or not this is true matters little. I can no more prove the past existence of David than I can that of Father Abraham or Isaac or Jacob or Joseph or Moses or Saul. They live in Scripture, and Scripture makes them real to my people. My grandfather became wealthy in the frankincense trade. His wealth bought him power and influence. My father, Heli, before I was born, waged a bloodless struggle with Herod the Great for the throne of Israel. The political realities of the day dictated victory for Herod. But my father, as consolation, was awarded spiritual stewardship of the vast multitude of wealthy Jews living outside Israel and Judea, especially those thriving in Ephesus and the 5 provinces of Asia Minor. These Hellenized but pious diasporic Jews paid a yearly tax to my father, who in turn forwarded a portion of the funds to Herod the Great for his monumental building projects. In addition to collecting taxes from the diaspora, Heli created new Jews by baptizing Gentiles who were attracted to the concept of a single deity. My father had been prosperous for generations, but Heli's uneasy partnership with Herod the Great created a fortune that rivaled that of the king himself. My father's first wife was also of royal blood. She died giving birth to a son named Joseph. Father married again the following year, and 3 years later I was born. My half-brother Joseph would, late in life, wed a high-born maid of the tribe of Benjamin. A male child born of this union represented the mystical grafting of the bloodlines of Israel's first 2 kings, Saul of the tribe of Benjamin and David of the tribe of Judah. In the vineyard of Jewish royalty, the fruit of this union was the hereditary King of the Jews, whom many would hail as Messiah, the Anointed One, and whom the Greeks called the Christ. I am the poor boy's uncle. So I really hope you get An Accidental Christ, the story of Jesus as told by his uncle. I really hope you get it. I really hope you read it, but if you just buy it, that'll be good too. Okay. Anyway, that's it for Saturday morning cartoons. Please order a 6-pack of this. It'll make the people at Llewellyn very happy and make me just ecstatic. Till tomorrow for Sunday school. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Loves the law. Love and your will. Bye-bye.